Howdy doody, buckaroonies. So 2020 happened, I guess. What started off as a fairly optimistic year, going to my first NAMM show and having a lot of big plans and a lot of opportunities on the horizon, very quickly turned into what felt like getting punched in the mental testicles by a gorilla for the next 11 months. Seriously though, this year has been weird at best, and it's been a bit of a wild ride, and it's been kind of difficult. But all of the insanity of 2020 aside, it's actually been a pretty good year for plugins. So in this video, I wanted to share with you my favorite plugins that were released this year. This list isn't really in any particular order. These are just the plugins I liked and got the most use out of and that I think deserve the spotlight. But let me know what your favorites were. Leave those down in the comments so people have something else to check out and play around with. Kicking things off with a bang in 2020 was the PSP Infinistrip, which was actually released right at the beginning of the year. And this is probably one of my most used plugins this whole year. Virtually every mix session I have done has used the Infinistrip to mix pretty much everything. And it's also been a really handy sound design tool. I think this is easily the plugin I've gotten the most mileage out of. As you probably know, I'm like a huge super evangelist for the PSP plugins, and Infinistrip is no different. I was really excited when they said they were going to be doing some kind of channel strip format plugin, because I really like working in the channel strip workflow, and I think that's because I come from a background of working on hardware and consoles and stuff where you only had 4 bands of EQ and you couldn't add 10 different compressors. You just had to figure it out and get it right. One of the coolest features of Infinistrip, and something I didn't know I needed until I had it, is the ability to parameter match all modules of the same class. So we have this EQ here and we see how it's set, and if we fly through this, all the different EQ modules actually keep those exact same settings. And that is really handy when you're working on stuff to make sure you have the right tools for the job, because you can just listen for the differences between the module rather than having to then compensate and reset everything and then have, 10 different instances of this plugin open. So that stands for everything. Like the compressors here, if we switch through these, all those settings are exactly the same. Same with the preamps and anything else of the same class. The Free Fire Edition update, which was also released this year, included the Saturator and Brick Wall modules. So Brick Wall's just a really clean, transparent limiter, but Saturator is probably one of my most overused things here. So I'm going to play this on a drum mix, and we're going to dial through the different modes and set some different settings, and you can hear what this can bring to a sound. Just a great sounding module to add some flavor and character to things. The other great thing about Infinistrip though is when you buy it, you actually get all of these modules. You don't have to purchase them and add them on or anything, which is awesome because it comes with so many that are so useful, and you're basically getting a bunch of different PSP plugins in one, because a lot of these are based on some of their other plugins. So like the Opto limiter and VCA limiter is Twin L. Saturator, I think, is the saturator from their mix pack. Some of their EQs are in here, some of their compressors. We've got like an old timer, FET pressor, VCA pressor is kind of based on bus pressors. So you get a whole bunch of different plugins all at once, which is awesome. And some new stuff like the preamps and other things that were designed specifically for this plugin and for this format. I think Infinistrip has also made me a better mixer this year because it's a bit more restrictive. Like I said, you can't add unlimited bands and unlimited compressors and stuff. You just kind of have to get it right at the source and use this to refine the sound. And I think that's challenged me in a lot of good ways. And on top of that, Infinistrip, like their Vintage Warmer and other plugins, just make things sound better. So that's kind of the added bonus of the cherry on top. It's pushed me to become a better mix engineer, and it also, I think, in a way helps me make things sound better than I could make them sound on my own. So that's always a nice added bonus. Of course, we can't talk about plugins in 2020 without talking about Vital from Matt Teitel, which is one of the most ridiculous releases of this year. Vital is this weirdly perfect combination of everything that's great about classic and modern synths. With something like a Juno, it's hard to make a bad sound with it because it doesn't give you all that much that can go wrong. Vital gives you a ton of incredibly deep and powerful features, but lays it out in such a well thought out and intuitive way that for how complicated it is very hard to get a bad sound out of Vital. The modulation workflow in Vital is also excellent. You can see it's super easy to add tons of different modulations to patches. We can just drag, plop something on, and we're done, and away we go. Which is just incredible. I think this reminds me a lot of something like maybe Arturia's Pigments or something like Parawave Rapid. It's just very well thought out and a lot of fun to work with. One of the other great features of Vital is the fact that it offers MPE support. So with a handy MPE controller like this here Stencil Morph, it's really easy to assign MPE stuff into a patch and make it a bit more spicy. So I've just got some slide stuff macroed here, and I can just play a note and move it around and get a bunch of different weird sound effects out of it. Which is a really powerful thing to be able to do, and I think this makes for a synth that is capable of not only all your bread and butter stuff, but some very expressive, dynamic, and fluid patches, which is hard to get in some synths. Vital also has a free edition, which I think is the boost we really needed in 2020, but if you do check out Vital, I highly recommend you support the project with the $25, $80, or $5 a month subscription options, because you get access to a bunch of other stuff, which is really awesome. Overall, I think Vital offers this perfect balance between power and usability, and also makes it really fun to make patches with, and the workflow is so fast that it only takes a couple of minutes to make cool patches like this. So that's pretty neat. And of course, Vital has made the end of the year kind of fun with all these sErUm killer and text to wavetable memes.
I can make it say poo-poo.
Next up, we've got Generate and its free sibling Pendulate from Newfangled Audio, and I think these are two of the most unique synthesizers released this year. Generate and Pendulate offer something I've never heard a VST do, and on top of that, they have MPE support and offer insane amounts of modulation, and like Vital, it's very well thought out and super easy to use, taking something that might be kind of a weird concept and making it a lot of fun to explore. Pendulate is totally free and on its own is capable of a lot of really cool and interesting sounds, but things really start to shine with Generate with some of the added features and the polyphony. It makes it feel like one of the only synthesizers I've used, especially in VST form, that plays like an instrument. It's very hard to describe how this thing reacts. Generate takes something that's a bit weird and a bit different and turns it into something very, very usable. And it's super easy to add modulation. We could bring in this LFO just by clicking and dragging and moving it. And we can assign it to multiple things. So we can add a lot of motion and interest to a patch very, very quickly without a ton of effort. So we can slow that down and let's see what we've got. With the amount of expression and modulation alone, it's a very fun synth to explore, but it also offers some great effects, including some of the best reverbs I've heard in a synth. These are all new reverb algorithms designed just for this, and it sounds awesome. Next up, we've got UVI's Shade, which is a deceptively simple thing that I think actually made EQ plugins interesting again for me. Shade offers a bunch of different modulators and filter types to really spice things up, including designing your own kind of custom filter things that can make sounds go absolutely beyond what you think you could do with them. Shade also offers dynamic EQs, so we can go in here and make any band dynamic, making it a really easy tool for sound design and editing for things like de-essing or gating effects or whatever else you want to do. And that's a pretty powerful thing. It's not only a great flexible EQ tool, but also a powerful creative tool. So here I've got just a pad from the CS80, and we're going to run that through a couple Shade presets and see what Shade brings to the table. Next up here, we've got the new synth from Reason Studios, which is Friktion, which was released this year for the Reason Rack and for Reason as a DAW, and this thing is really good. One of the cool things about Friktion for being a physical modeling synthesizer, I think, is that it reminds me a lot of piano tech. Rather than being super weird and off the wall, it's actually something that's very usable and very musical. The cool thing with Friktion, though, is it doesn't really restrict you, kind of like piano tech does, to staying in that normal territory. You can really start to experiment with the resonator types and other settings to push this pretty far beyond what you would think a string synthesizer can do. And it can really get pretty spicy and experimental if you start to go in and mess with things. Like I mentioned though, on the string end of things, this thing is very, very capable of some nice sounding violins and cellos, especially when they're kind of buried in a mix, and all around is a great tool for adding some just kind of really pretty sounds and just breathing a bit of life into a mix that might just need a little bit of something. Next up here is another free plugin. This is Chow Tape Model by Chow DSP, and this is something that went way under my radar until someone told me about it. This, I think, is actually one of the best tape simulators out there at the moment, and it is absolutely free, so you can go get it right now. This thing offers tons of different controls, from the input stages to the filters, the tape tone, loss, tape speed, degradation, chew, flutter, and wow. So basically everything you need to dial in a tape sound, ranging from a little bit of tape and a little bit of something something to completely destroyed garbage that was dragged through a Walmart parking lot. This is a really great plugin to add just some extra interest and vibe to a mix in a super easy way with the presets, or by dialing in your own kind of custom good or crappy tape sound. So we're just going to throw this on some drums here and twiddle with the parameters so you can get an idea of what this thing can do. And I think you get the idea. Chow Tape is absolutely free and a great tool for getting a bit of heat and vibe to a mix, or totally destroying a sound in a fun but very flexible way. Next up is everything new in the Arturia V Collection 8. I was really hoping we would get an update to V Collection this year, and I was curious to see what they would add. So we got the Emulator 2, which I was really hyped for. That was one of my kind of top wish list items, was some kind of emulator. We've got Vocoder V, which is that like Moog 16-band vocoder. OBXA, not new, but now included. There was a huge update to the Stage 73, which now sounds fantastic, even though the older one didn't sound bad at all. And we got an update to the Jupiter 8 as well, which now sounds even more fantastic. And to complement the Jupiter, we also got a Juno 6. So a lot of new stuff and a whole lot of new sounds in the V Collection. I just recently did a V Collection video, so if you want to hear all these in a bit more detail, I just don't want to soak up a bunch of time diving through all of these, you can check that video out. But I'm so happy to have some new V Collection stuff because it rounds out what was already an incredibly solid lineup. With that being said, I would like to now submit my personal request for V Collection 9. I would love to see an Ensoniq Mirage or an Ensoniq Fismo. So Arturia, your move. Next up here, we've got two cheap but really good plugins from Baby Audio. Comeback Kid, which is a delay unit / color box because you can actually just run signal through it without needing to use the delay. And Super VHS, which is a vibinator / saturator / really good chorus unit. I've got an art preset up here in the Jupiter 8V. It sounds like this. And we're gonna add Comeback Kid and Super VHS to that to see what they can add to this sound. Baby Audio has me really excited to see whatever they've got coming up next. I think they're definitely one of the companies to look out for because they've nailed this niche of flexibility and usability with something with a sort of limited amount of controls, but everything that is accessible is something that is going to really add something to the sound instead of just sitting there fiddling with stuff, listening for all the little fine details. It's just a put it on, set it up, and move on type of deal, which I really dig. Next up is Sketch Cassette 2 from Aberrant DSP. This is a plugin I almost got a while ago, the original Sketch Cassette, and I don't know why I just never picked it up, but I saw Sketch Cassette 2 came out and it was only 20 bucks on sale, so I was like, why not? And I am so glad that I got this plugin because it is incredibly useful. This is a plugin that's designed to add that kind of lo-fi, crappy tape feel to things. And I think this is a large part of kind of my sound with my own music. You know, I love adding things that have just little bits of texture and movement and character, but also just as a sound design tool from when I'm working on things that are in more lo-fi genres or whatever. It's a very powerful and easy thing to add that crappy cassette loop, hipster, muted color tones, fake plant sound to whatever you put it on. Sketch Cassette 2 opens up a lot more extra controls here, as you can see. So there's a lot of fine-grained control to really dial in the tapey sound between something that's really subtle or something that is totally destroyed garbage, and that's a lot of fun to experiment with. And it has a bunch of presets, so it's really easy just to throw on a sound and go on a preset and move on with life. So I've got a pad here in Vital, and we're gonna flick through some of the presets in Sketch Cassette to get an idea of what this does. So I've got a nice pad preset here I made in Vital, and we're gonna run that through a couple of presets from Sketch Cassette to see what this can do to a sound. 2020 was a really good year for reverbs, and I couldn't pick just one to put in this video. So I've got Verb from iZotope, which is a really handy mixing utility reverb. It's also got the iZotope Assistant technology, so it's a cool reverb to throw on things and just works in a mix, but can also treat itself, making it very easy to throw on, run the assistant, make a couple tweaks, and leave it alone. Over here, I've got Valhalla Supermassive, which is absolutely free. It is a delay/reverb unit that has that Valhalla magic secret sauce in it and is totally free, so you can go get it for free. And Denise Perfect Plate XL, which is another reverb from Denise in their Perfect Reverb Type Here series. This is kind of like Verb. It's a really good utility reverb that sounds incredibly clean. I don't really fully understand Denise's perfect reverb algorithm stuff, but it sounds incredibly smooth and works really, really well on just about any source. To demonstrate each of these, I've got just a clean sine pluck. And we're going to listen to each of these reverbs on that patch. Finally, to close things off, one of my favorite free synthesizers released this year is Odin 2 from the Wave Warden. This is kind of like Thor from Reason, but in a different light because it adds some new features and abilities, which is really fun. The UI is maybe not super exciting. It does look like a free synth, but it sounds incredible. Odin 2 is still a work in progress from what I understand, so I'm very excited to see what the future holds for this synth because Already, it's really good. So I'm very excited to see anything else that gets added to this to take it up to a whole other level. I think the thing that stood out to me with Odin 2 is not only its incredible sound and workflow and usability, but it's projects like this that make me very hopeful for the future of the music industry, because this is something that you can really tell someone put a lot of time and love and thought into, and it's always nice to see people releasing stuff that they are obviously very passionate about, especially in terms of like synthesizers and VSTs and stuff, because they're not just trying to make another sErUm killer or some other overhyped marketing thing. This is just a really good synth that someone really wanted to make and wanted to do a really good job at. Odin 2 is pretty straightforward. We've got 3 oscillators, 3 filters, an amplifier section, mod matrix, some basic effects, and that's really it. There are a ton of different oscillator types, analog oscillators, we've got wavetable with some included wavetables, multi-oscillator, which is like a super saw generator, vector oscillator, so we can blend between things. We've got the chiptune oscillator, FM oscillator, phase mod oscillator, and noise oscillator. Also wave draw, where we can go in and draw a waveform, commit it, and play it. We've got the chip draw oscillator, which is like a lo-fi version of the wave draw, and then spectral draw, which is something like, I guess, maybe Harmer, or I guess Operator in Ableton is something that's similar to this. One of the other really cool things though is within the oscillators, if we go into like the phase mod, for instance, now you can do carriers and modulators, but you can also actually set this to be the other oscillators. So we can go through here and use the wave draw from oscillator 1. The same stands for the third oscillator, so we can go in here and do a wave draw oscillator instead of a spectral draw. So we can go wave draw, oscillator 3, and I guess that was the wrong one, so spectral draw from oscillator 1. And now we can phase mod these two custom waveforms together, making this a pretty deep thing. The filters are really good as well. There's low pass, band pass, high pass, SEM filter, diode ladder, KRG 35, low pass and high pass, comb filter, informant filter, and a ring modulator. The effects are not really anything to write home about, but I think the ability to stack 3 different filters together with a pretty deep mod matrix and add some basic effects is really nice. Here I've made a quick patch with the wavetable oscillator, the phase mod oscillator, and then the multi-oscillator that's going to a formant filter, low pass. I've got the phaser and chorus coming out of it, so right now it sounds like this. Which sounds excellent on its own, but to really cap this off, I've added in a Valhalla Supermassive with the Final Frontier preset. And I think that is how I'm going to cap off this video, is let you listen to the audio glory that is Odin 2 with Supermassive. And so that is my year 2020 in plugins. A big thank you to all of the companies who released these plugins this year. I know 2020 has been particularly difficult, so I'm very happy that we got all this cool stuff this year, because I think it's helped the creative types, myself included, to stay inspired and continued creating despite all the insanity that has been this year. What were your favorite plugins this year? If they didn't make it onto this list, be sure to leave them down in the comments below so people have something else to check out and play around with over the winter. So yeah, I think that concludes my 2020 wrap up, super happy fun time plugin list extravaganza with lots of reverb and stuff. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I hope you learned something. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon.